Bullshit.
The No BS Marketing Show is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audible.com/NoBS. Over 200,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. It's the No BS Marketing Show. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today is Shen Loh, an associate professor of mathematics at Carnegie Mellon University and currently the national coach of the United States International Math Olympiad team. Under his coaching, the team won the competition in 2015, 2016, and 2018, their first victories since 1994 as a team. He had previously won a silver medal for his individual performance for the U.S. as a participant in 1999, and he is also the founder of the educational website Expii. Shen Loh, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
The first part of the show was just filled with tons of cool information. So I just want to go back and recap just a little bit. You talked about how early in life you grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, and you liked math because it brought answers. And you liked how you already had at an early age the concept of data-driven growth. And you continued to parlay that and emphasize that and focus on that. And then you competed in 1999 in the Olympiad, the Mathematics Olympiad. You won a silver medal individually. Your team did well, but for the United States standards, ended up being 10th, which is the second worst performance in U.S. history, which is still a great performance. Just to make the team and finish in the top 10 is amazing. But you said that turned into something that throughout your life has been something that you can convey to anyone you're helping to grow, because you talk about how you saw that as a failure, even though most of us would say it was still success, and you saw how that could drive you and how you could learn from that and how that could help you teach, and you've applied that to your coaching. You became a mathematics professor at Carnegie Mellon, and you were really focused on helping students at Carnegie Mellon and helping recruit great students, and then once you became the coach, it changed your perspective. It changed how you viewed things, and you wanted to set a goal of trying to lift the mathematical interest and ability across all of America. You said that's an admirable goal because you didn't have really a budget. You didn't have a staff. It was just you digging at it. So we then on the tail end started really breaking down and getting into XP, and you talked about how something that I want to touch on now as we come into episode 2 is you said a phrase, focus on connecting with the person who is listening, because you founded the company with the idea if every type of person, any question you could let the entire world weigh in on. So it's sort of like the Wikipedia of teaching mathematics, except unlike Wikipedia, you focus on the core concepts of mathematics that people need to know. And you said this statement here, you said factual accuracies is what you focus on, because you don't care so much about who delivers it and how they deliver it as long as it's factually accurate. Talk about that and how you manage it.
Right. I should actually say this is something that we are extremely interested in building more and more and more of. So right now with Expii, it is indeed a platform where anyone in the world can contribute their way of seeing a particular topic. And we did see that there was some amount of growth from people contributing these ways of explaining. Actually, we also did notice that, at least at the beginning, many of the people contributing were these super enthusiasts. And I should actually say that if you're trying to write something for, let's say, an average student or a struggling student to learn, it might not be best delivered by someone who is so enthusiastic about the subject that they're talking about all the nitty-gritty right from the get-go. So actually what we also have is we are working with amazingly talented students in the University of Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon University. We actually have a wonderful team of content writers and content interns who are helping us to actually create some of that initial content in-house to steer the way that all of this crowdsourcing is happening in the world. And in particular, one of the things that we're actively trying to do now is to intentionally try to create different ways of learning any particular topic. When our team writes lessons for a particular topic, the goal is not to just write 3 lessons, but to think of 3 different dimensions or directionalities. And even as part of this, we also try to understand how real students think. So in this sense, you can't just write in a vacuum. You can't just write in a room. Number one, it helps that your writers are college students, close enough to that age. But number two, we also spend time trying to get to know students from the community and get direct feedback. So there's a unique way that we're generating this content, which is that we'll make content and we'll actually ask a high school student, what do you think of this? And the high school student is welcome to tell us, this is boring. They're not actually that used to being able to just say to someone who gave them educational content, this is boring. Sometimes we need to tell them, don't just be polite. Tell us where it's boring, right? But if they tell us that something is boring, we ask why. And we ask, what are you interested in? What are you looking for? And this helps us to have a process with a feedback loop where, in some sense, we're really trying to optimize for making the kind of educational content that a student would actually like.
There's so many things for our loyal No BSers. I want to explain why you're on the show and how it's all relevant to the No BS marketing concept. The first is why you're on the show. You are a educational technology startup in Pittsburgh. We're all about eds and meds and growth in this region. And so a lot of that is what I talk about on the show. A lot of our guests are tied to that. The show is also about leadership and communication. And you've shown that you've done something we challenge all of our clients to do, is clearly articulate their why. And you've done that, how you want to improve mathematics across the country. But then you looked at your customers' why is their reason for buying. And you've really looked at your customers and you've drilled them down and said they consume content differently, which we say on this show every single episode. Each of us consumes content differently, so we have to adapt as content creators. And you talked about how you drilled down that target audiences and you have different content creators producing different types of content so that you can reach and influence the target audience, which is what No BS marketing is. Then you talked about something that I love, because as a coach, I always want to explain the why of any drill or anything we're doing, but then I want to hear their why. I want them to give me feedback, but I love what you said there. You said, you can say this is boring, but then we're going to ask you why. And that's what's fair. One of the challenges today, more than ever, because of the climate in the world, particularly in the United States, we don't get that. We get everybody just stating what they don't like. It's fine to state what you don't like, but then explain why, so that the person you're dealing with can explain their why, which will bring some clarity to both parties, and then change things to make it better. So that's why this is relevant to the No BS Marketing Show. I'm really enjoying it. So now you dig into this, and I want to go back to my original point from episode 1. Across the United States, my sense is many young people, a big segment of young people are intimidated by mathematics. So they then say things like, I don't like math, or I'm not good at math. I will still have people, we use predictive index as a tool, and it's a cognitive tool that measures your natural needs and natural behaviors, what energizes you versus what drains you. And it's very helpful in professional growth, personal growth, and team building. When I say to someone, hey, I'm going to send you the PI, it takes 5 minutes to complete, and they'll say, there's no math on that test, is there? I mean, if you know how many times I hear that, because when you take Myers-Briggs and a couple of the other ones, there's a little bit of math. And I hear that. There's no math on that because I stink at math. There's no math that I'm not good at math. And they probably aren't as bad as they think. But this is a perception issue that you have, and you're kind of helping to fix it. But I want to talk about that from your standpoint. When you had that 30 to 60, 90 days of ideation with your team before you actually started building XP, did that come into discussion about the perception of math and how you might have to battle that?
Right. So a very important thing is that when I articulated the why of what I do and what Expii does, I said I wanted to raise the interest and ability in math across the United States. And I'm actually very deliberate about the order of those two words. Interest comes before ability. And so the idea of why we started making something where you could have many different ways of trying to internalize a topic was precisely to try to grab onto that interest. Because again, a question is whether or not people are scared of math. Indeed, as you just said, if math is something that's scary, you would maybe freeze before you start thinking. And it's very hard to think while frozen. And so now I think that a lot of that has to do with how things are presented. In particular, one of the things that we're experimenting with, which we are still trying to find funding to do more than just a pilot of, we've done a pilot already, is something where even the way that math is taught, the person delivering the math lesson could be a student. I mean, it could be a person who's around the same age level as the people who are learning. In some sense, what I'm going for here is that sometimes, I guess I should actually say this was inspired by advertising. In advertising, what convinces you to buy Coca-Cola is to see someone that you aspire to be, that you feel like you could actually be, looking like they're having a good life, And then you say maybe the Coca-Cola is helpful. Nobody ever told you the Coca-Cola was good for you. And so the thought here was that for this other arm of Expii that we're trying to actually work on creating higher value content, we're talking about video content, we're actually working on ways to try to see if we can have content that teaches math or shows math in some positive light, where the people in front of the camera might be people that the real audience can relate to. In that sense, that's actually why a very unusual thing perhaps about Expii is that I actually am not the one teaching the lessons. Many times you'll have an educational website created by someone who's a teacher. I'm also a teacher, and oftentimes the lessons are all the teacher's lessons. Almost none of the lessons on Expii are the ones that I teach, precisely because I wanted to make something to let there be lots of different ways for people to internalize, and really because my real dream is that at some point, everyone who logs on would be able to see someone that they can really relate to, both in terms of a life experience, life background, and to see that this is a person, that person looks happy, and they have a reasonable pathway to get there. And so maybe that will help to break this block that math is only for certain kinds of people.
I have to tell you, it's like you're one of the ultimate no BS marketers. When you say how important the order of the wording is, and you said the interest and ability, and you get the interest first, that is such a powerful why, and you're choosing each word carefully. Then what you just went through about that perception, and it's actually a model that's changing across almost any discipline, ranging from coaching of sports to leading in the workplace to mathematics to teaching how to be a doctor, how to be a nurse, is that, and I'm really glad because 20 years ago when I was really starting my coaching and teaching and leading career, 25 years ago, it was unusual to get the people your team involved. And I saw how much that worked, but it's still not completely easy for the leaders who have been around. So like, it's going to be a challenge to get the next generation of leaders to do what you're saying, which is to ask for all that feedback, be comfortable with it, be vulnerable about it. What are your thoughts on that beyond what you're doing, just as a global perspective from teaching and coaching from businesses and schools and education and sports? How do you see some of that stuff happening?
So I'm an optimist in the sense that because I work with so many young people, whenever I see a young person, I see somebody who knows much more than I did at that time, across all sorts of disciplines. I see somebody who has access to the whole world of information and has, if they wish, access to see different perspectives on things. So when I see this all as opportunity, what I mean is that when we're talking about whether the next generation will have those tools, in some sense why I started Expii is to try to give more people such tools. But at the same time, Expii right now teaches math and science. It doesn't only have to teach math and science. We started with math and science only because those were topics that I could look at an explanation and immediately know if we were on the right track. But what I'm referring to is whether through Expii or through other means, if we're trying to have more people learn how to have these, in some sense, better approaches to getting feedback and improving in life, I think that these are all things that can be changed and can be changed with speeds that are much faster than we could have done when I was growing up, or all of us were growing up.
That's Shen Loh. The No BS Marketing Show is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audible.com/NoBS. Over 200,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Remember, enter audible.com/NoBS. You get a free book, free month of Audible. And Shen Loh, you are a Carnegie Mellon mathematics professor, but you've started Expii, and it's a educational technology startup here in Pittsburgh that's great for our region. I guess this is the multi-million-dollar question is, what's your plan from a messaging standpoint to increase awareness and usage of Expii?
I should say that the main point for Expii is the word personal. It's about personalization. It's about the power of the individual. And I guess as somebody who grew up in America, I think that the individual, the potential, the power, and the value of the individual these are values that I hold very dear. And I think all of us as Americans hold very dear as well. And in some sense, the idea of Expii is to bring this same value of the individual into the education world in a way which teachers have always wanted to do. I actually think that human teachers, people in the classroom, are wonderful. There's only one problem. There's usually 30 students in the classroom that the teacher has to share their time among. And also when the school buys books, they have to buy one book, one type of book for the entire subject. So the basic principle behind all of Expii is to celebrate this personalness in every dimension of that word possible. And that's why you see things like different ways of learning any particular topic. That's why part of Expii lets you do different problems and see different lessons based on how you are doing as a person. But ultimately, the goal that we have is to unlock that power of every individual and to let every individual feel that freedom of choice as they're entering the education world.
I love it. I think that's great. So now, what is the penetration and awareness level? And let's talk. I'm going to give you like 3 questions at once, and you can go off on a riff and tell me how this works. Okay, so don't answer yet. Are teachers a target market because you've got to convince them that they can work with XP? Are parents a target market, I'm going to assume, because you need to reach them to be able to convince their 9-year-old, 12-year-old, 14-year-old. And then out of the actual student themselves, what is the age that's best? So those are 3 different questions. Like, are those different target markets of teachers and parents and students there? And if yes, what are the strategic marketing plans and tactics to actually reach and influence those target markets?
Great. So teachers, parents, and students are very, very different. And I should actually say that from the get-go, since we put interest and ability as the goals of what we wanted to boost in America, and interest was first, this is actually what caused us to put the focus first on the student. And I want to say that this is a certain level of discipline that we have throughout our entire company, from the design of the interface to the creation of the content. We care extremely, we really care about the fact that whatever we're making is something that students love. And by focusing so strongly on the student, our philosophy is that we will be able to make a better product than if we were satisfied once we had sold the product to a school administrator who could then force students to use it, or if we had sold the product to parents and expect the parents to force students to use it. Notice I'm using the words force on both of those. We actually said if you really want to engage the student, go directly to the student. Now at that point, we also do want parents and teachers to support what we're doing. So the messaging that we use on parents and teachers is that this is safe. I myself also go to give professional development sessions to teachers. I myself am a teacher. I'm involved in teacher communities. But what we're doing is we're not telling the teachers to tell their students to use it. We're just letting people be aware that the brand is a positive one and it's a healthy one. So the real question then is how to reach the students. Because, for example, we're not buying advertisements. That would be far too expensive. What we discovered recently, and what is our current strategy, is the power of search engine optimization. Because while doing our research of what a student wants, what we learned is that actually the typical student does not go to a particular website every time, not to the same website every time to look for a way to learn something. Well, actually they do. The website they go to is Google. They search Google to try to find out what is the best way to learn that topic. This is what we learned through user research. So what we discovered is if you can actually have your platform show up at the top of Google search results for all of the keywords that people are searching for in high school math and science, you will automatically get that traffic. And then that's where our user research is so important, because then what we would do is we would actually ask high school students to compare what we have against all of the top 10 results on Google. And our design team is not satisfied until the answer that the students give is that yours is actually the best one on the internet. Now, that would mean that our product has reached the right level. The second piece is then how to actually get it into Google. That's where the work of our content developers and the community, the crowdsourcing community, has been so helpful. We have 25,000 pieces of content. This was all started before I even knew what content marketing was. We started this because we said if you want a website that people can learn from, you need to have some content. Great. After 2.5 years, there are 25,000 pieces of content being indexed by Google. And guess what? They're on the topics that high school students, every high school student in America, is searching for, because this is how they do their homework. And furthermore, what we discovered is the competitors who also operated free websites that anyone could access, let's just say that the competitors didn't have as much depth of content as we did. Because if you went to any of our other competitors' results on Google, you would get their one way of learning that topic. You press the Expii link on Google, and you see multiple ways of learning that topic, also formatted in a way that works on your mobile phone. That also turns out to, originally we did it just to make it the best product. Turns out that Google's algorithms reward you if your website is viewable on a mobile phone. And since we prioritize the user experience, prioritize the customer preference, we ultimately discovered by accident that we actually appear as number one on Google search results for certain keywords in math. And once we discovered this, actually our next level of marketing strategy, which we're executing right now, is to actually work with professional search engine marketing experts to optimize our website so that Google will actually rank us in the front. Statistically, right now, we're already ranked in the top 100 top 100 results for 10,000 keywords in math and science. And we're actually on the front page on 500 of the keywords. But when we did our own research to compare how we're doing on those 10,000 that were not yet on the first 10 results, we came to the conclusion that ours deserves to be number 1, 2, or 3. And so basically what this means is we were just being held back by certain architectural things about our website because we hadn't even cared before. We didn't realize this was an avenue. And so because we've learned this is an avenue, we're now running at full speed down this. And this is actually what could potentially cause an explosion. Again, this would come in from the students just because of the fact that our design is to the level that students love it. And then because of the brand power across the parents and the teachers, people would know that this is not something to be scared of. This is not a website that will teach you to cheat on your homework. That's not what I stand for. This is a website that will teach you something.
Give me an example of a search that a 13-year-old would make that you'd come up 1, 2, or 3.
So one would be how to subtract logs with the same base.
How do you subtract logs with the same base?
So that one, now that's a math lesson. The idea is, that's a math lesson. It's basically that you would take, the answer is the log of the two things you're logging divided by each other.
Okay.
Yes.
Second question. So I just wanted to hear how that sounded. Okay, so there's people of all ages searching when they're doing their homework. They're frustrated. They search for something. Part of it might have been they might have actually hoped to cheat something. They could copy and paste. But what you're hoping is you come up, they click on yours and actually learn. Second question. What's your gut feel on how many teachers even know you exist?
Oh, I think it's pretty darn low. If I wanted to guess how many teachers know that we exist, I would guess 10,000. And the reason is because we've gone to certain math teacher conferences and probably met a few thousand through that. However, there are many, many more math teachers in the country. And actually what we're expecting is that, in fact, it's not only students who are searching for these things, teachers also search for these things. Actually, I search for these things. This is how I do my quick reference. So that's why we came to the conclusion that if you just make the best designed website that loads quickly, everyone, well, the teachers and the students will immediately know you exist. Parents don't search for these as often.
Let's talk about your website real quick. I love it. I think it is everything you just said. Go ahead, walk through how the people can get there so we get a plug in there, where it is, what the URL is, and then talk a little bit about that site.
Sure. So the website is called expii.com. It is spelled EXPII.com. We can talk more about the name later if you're curious. Now, you could go directly to the website expii.com, and you can actually even use it to learn an entire subject by just clicking on something like algebra and pressing the practice button, which then gives you problems and lessons interchangeably as you need them until you learn that subject. The way that most people are finding us is coming in by Googling a particular term in math and science and landing already deep inside our website at a particular page that has many ways of explaining that topic. This is because we wanted to minimize user frustration. If they've Googled for something, they want to see how to do it. However, that same page has a button which lets you practice more to learn not just by reading, but by actively working. And that also introduces you to the flow of what we actually think Expii is about. To be honest, Expii is not just a reference site. The real power of Expii is if you use it to practice. We have a system where if you practice problems and you do them correctly, we automatically give you harder topics. And if you do those incorrectly, we give you easier topics. So it's like guiding you forward and backward. But throughout, when you're doing the problems, we always give you a button that you can press to learn the lesson behind the problem. And this is an educational philosophy that I'm trying to propagate, which is that the way you can learn any topic is not by seeing a single lesson, but by doing problems in that topic until you get stuck. Then figure out, then read the lesson for that particular problem, unstick yourself, keep doing more problems that maybe get easier because you had trouble. And anytime you find yourself unable to do something, figure out how to do it. You might see the same lesson multiple times if you stumble multiple times, but after you've seen the same thing about 3 times, you will not need it again. This is, by the way, how we learn in real life. The way we learn in real life is by saying, I want to do X. I want to add a room on my house. Actually, I'm not sure I recommend that the typical person just jumps out and does this. But what I mean is, in real life, you have a task you're trying to do. You figure out how much of it you can do already. Anything you can't do, you try to learn. And if you run into trouble on the way, you learn that piece. This is fundamentally different from the way that the education usually works, which is where you see the lesson and then you practice 10 problems about the lesson, and then you see a new lesson and you practice 10 problems about the new lesson. So this is actually the principle of how Expii actually works. In order to introduce people to this way of working, we thought to just win first by winning the reference game. But then at the same time, to help onboard people into this deeper experience if they want to get more involved.
That's Shen Loh. He's a Carnegie Mellon mathematics professor. He's the coach of the U.S. Olympiad mathematics team that's won the championship multiple years. And he also is the founder of the educational learning technology startup Expii. He gave some great insights there that it's not about driving you to Expii site, entering that site itself. It's about organically, I look something up and I find Expii gives me the answer to it. And that's great because then I'm comfortable that I found. I didn't need to say I wanted to go to, because actually the expii.com would be a bit problematic from a branding standpoint. So touch on that. What ended up happening with why did the name end up the way that it did?
Sure. So we wanted to have a short name because it was an internet website and also a brand. At the same time, I will say that one of the difficulties is that most short names are taken if you want a .com. And so we decided not to go with an English word. Part of that reason is also because although I've said our goal is to increase interest and ability in math in America, there's no reason to really stop it at America once you build an internet website that can be used anywhere. So we also thought that we didn't want necessarily just an English word. So in that sense, what we started doing is we actually started thinking of lots of prefixes to words that might mean nice things. And we were just ideating, just like spitballing all different prefixes, suffixes that might mean something. And somehow EXP showed up with experience, explore, explain, express, expand. Sounded pretty good. And furthermore, I think what happened is I think we also noticed that it also is actually the most beautiful equation in math. Now, this thing is very, very deep. I should say that there's 2 layers to this meaning. The first layer is it sounds like great things that start with EXP. And that one we can tell to actually everyone, and people get it. If you use XP or if you use any other way of learning for a while, then you will actually start to learn at some point that there are certain numbers that are very special in math, such as pi, which is the circumference of a circle divided by the diameter, 3.14 and so on. There's another very special number called I, which is the square root of -1. This comes up in some algebra classes. And there's also a very special number called E. If you remember from your scientific calculator, there was a button called LN, and it somehow had something to do with a mysterious number called E. It turns out that there's an equation. It's if you Google for the most beautiful equation in math, you'll find this equation. And it's an equation that combines the E, the pi, and the I in a way where you use the E as an exponent. So the EX in the XP stands for exponent. The PI stands for the pi, and the I at the end is the last I. And these actually combine together to make the most beautiful equation in math. And so that was sold. So what I mean is then that was determined. Because what I mean is the name, number 1, was only 5 letters long, which is a short domain. Number 2, it had all these meanings you could extract from it as the prefix. And number 3, there was this very, very deep mathematical meaning, similar to how Google actually means 10 to the power of 100, or 1 with 100 zeros, if you spelled it slightly differently. And so the thought process was something with many, many layers, and then that would work for the name.
Okay. So the vast majority of people don't know that why Google's name is Google, but the inside people do. And you're assuming the same thing would happen with XP.
Well, our goal is that at some point when we're successful in helping to raise the interest and ability in math across the world, that actually everyone would get to a certain point where they'd say, oh my gosh, that's why it's called XP.
So what it is part of the goal is, I learned so much while I'm going through it. Then one day I go, wait, that's why it's named that way.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right.
It's an
I like
Easter
it.
egg.
I like it. Oh, that's really good. So Shen Loh of Carnegie Mellon University, professor, plus also the founder of Expii. How many people work at Expii right now that are like, say, full-time employees, and how many people are people that are just involved
Right. So we have about 8 full-time employees right now, and we have somewhere between 5 and 10 interns
Okay.
because of the fact that we put our offices right in the middle of Oakland. So we are lucky enough to have both University of Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon in walking distance.
Smart. Was there anything else you'd like to talk about or anything you thought I'd ask you that I didn't?
I think what I would like to just close with is by saying why I guess I'm so excited to be here in Pittsburgh. Because I should say when I was attracted to here at the beginning, I was attracted by the fact that I knew that there were some very talented people in the universities in this area. But after moving here, I have actually come to the conclusion that this is indeed one of these up-and-coming cities. I've built a company here, so I'm not going anywhere. Our team has houses, right? But the idea is that I see this as a region where there is so much talent available. There's so much talent moving in at this point, not just from the universities, but just moving in. And so I see this as a place which indeed could incubate some of these great startup ideas in a way where the rent, for example, won't bankrupt you as quickly as Silicon Valley. Actually, I make that comment because, especially when you start something new, you actually don't have a huge amount of resources that you can throw around. And the fact that we have this great ratio of talent to, let's just say, the cost of living as a startup, I do feel that we're in a very sweet spot right now where Pittsburgh could indeed blow up into something huge. And to me, I find that extremely attractive to be part of.
Shen Loh, you've been an awesome guest. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for being an awesome host.
Great. Appreciate it. And to our loyal No BSers, thanks for joining us for the No BS Marketing Show brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audible.com/NoBS. Get a free download of a book and a 30-day free trial. Access to over 200,000 titles. And visit massolutions.biz for show notes, plus additional marketing and messaging resources. Sign up for the No BS Marketing Weekly Update to receive timely, valuable ideas to improve your marketing and transform your message. It's intended to be read in 2 minutes or less and will trigger some bright ideation for you, as Shen Loh has talked about throughout the show. Again, to sign up, visit massolutions.biz. And remember, ask yourself, what's the big idea? And build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions, no BS.